Well, my name's David Knowles. I'm going back many years ago, a bit longer than I wish to remember, but I went to Rivington School. I excelled at rugby, swimming, so on like that. Academically, I wasn't so bad. Academically, I wasn't so bad. And I've still got my school reports. Unfortunately, the day came when I had to leave school at the age of 15 and going into the man's world. Search around, I was going to be working at Varley's, a mould dresser. And my old granddad, he said to me, he said, "David, don't take that." He said, "It's a rotten job, it's filthy, filthy." So I went to UGB.
Did you know anything about it before you went there?
UGB?
Had you heard anything about it before you? No?
Not really, no. I finished up on the case gang at 15 years of age.
What's that? What's that
The
mean?
case gang is taking all the cases to the various leer ends of where the tanks were, and it's what they used to put the bottles in, these cases, big wooden boxes they were, B boxes, double Ds and so on. And we used to have these hand carts, and we used to drag them up the yard, because it was on a slope. It was hard work as well, and we used to pile these boxes on. So as soon as we got that done, we could have a minute then, like. And we had the man who was in charge of us. His name was Ernie Guest, and we used to drive him crazy. We used to hide in boxes, and he couldn't find us. Get him one big box and put another one over the top of us, like, you know. Anyway, you couldn't go on shift work until you was 16 years of age. On the case gang, I earned £3.16 and a penny a week, which is about £3.80p, you know, a week. I used to give my mum my wages. I used to get 10 bob back. She had the rest. And then I went on shift work when I was 16 and I got on more money. So I didn't give her my wage packet then, I give her money, you know. And I used to say, put that in the bank. And she used to have an old black handbag. Put it in there when there's so much money got in, she'd say, "Go and put it in post office." Anyway, that's a story. Another story.
So tell us about the shift work. What was that like?
Right.
Was it long hours? Or?
Yeah, started on shift work. Young fella, specifically when it was on nights, working nights, them was long shifts, those were. It was very hot conditions as well. Now, this weather that we're getting now is extreme, and it was like that all the time when we're in the furnaces. Now, I worked on the Owens machines, and it's an old name they used to use from the old bottle hands, and I was called a taker-inner. And he actually looked at the bottles coming down what they call the Pony conveyor and going into a leer for annealing. Now, I was on the Owens machines, which were introduced to Ravenhead in, I think it was about 1913 or something like that. It was a fully automatic bottle machine. Nothing was touched by a human hand until it went down the bottom end to where the sorters were. Now, the funny thing about the sorters, you had men and women on that leer. Now, a leer, it's taking something down from a very high temperature to a lower temperature in control conditions. Because if you don't anneal a glass bottle, it'll just explode, right? And them ladies didn't get as much money as the men, and yet they were actually doing the same job as them, sorting. And the reason it was, I asked one time, I said, "It's not fair, they're doing the same job as the men, and yet they don't get the same money." Well, they said, well, what the men's supposed to do, once the case is filled, like the double D box or a B box, with bottles. It was the men who's supposed to lift it off for the women and put it on a pallet. But the women actually put them on the pallets themselves, like, you know, so that never worked out. Anyway, for a while, I was a taker in, and then they said to me, would you like to become a learned operator? Oh, I said, yeah, I'd love that, like, you know, so I became a learned operator, and they brought in a system where it was like 3 grades, grade 3, grade 2 and grade 1, and then like senior operator. So we started off at grade 3. And the interesting thing about it is that you couldn't operate a machine unless you were 18. But I was operating a machine when I was 17, believe it or not. So it was once said that I was youngest operator they ever had there.
How did you manage that? Did people know how old you were?
Oh, yeah, I was a good lad. That's right, you know, and...
They trusted you then?
Oh, I mean, the foreman, his name was Neddy Wilson, his name was. He come from Tatterheath. And he was only a little fella. And he'd squared up to you, like, you know. And I remember one time he told me a tale that this chap up Tatterheath gave him an haircut. When he had a look at it, there's steps all over it, like, you know. They chased him halfway around Tatterheath with an axe. Then that was it, fireplace. You know, a chopper used to chopping sticks. They chased him halfway around Tatterheath with this chopper, like, you know. Neddy Wilson, he was a character. Then we got a Scouser, we had a couple of Scousers there. Liverpudlians, for those who don't know, Scousers. And there was one bloke there, stick his 3 short planks he was. You said to him, will you go down the OM shop and ask Austin Cully, could you have a long stand? And he'd been away about 3 hours. Where have you been? He said, I've been waiting for him to give me that long stand. They gave me a long stand, they kept him there 3 hours. You know, things like that. Or sending the boiler house for a bucket of steam. But the best one I got him ever was, it was a mad hot day. And I said to him, I said, can you go down to the bottom of the yard where the lodge is? You know, where the policemen are and the main gates are coming into the factory. He said, yeah. I said, can you ask him to open the gates a bit wider, let a bit more air in? And he went down there.
Sounds like you had fun, Dave Knowles.
Yeah,
good old days.
It's what you make out of it, like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the people who were there are much older than I. A lot of the old bottle hands, and it was off those that I learned a lot about my trade, you know, in bottle making. Used to do what we call swabbing up. Well, on the Owens machine, you use graphite. But on the IS machines, which I'll tell you after about them, they use what they call mould lube. Because the moulds and the Patterson moulds, which are called blanks, they are porous. And what you've got to do, you've got to put something in there to cover them pores up so the glass doesn't stick. And you used to swab them. And there was one we used to use was, you used to get a stick and get, each operator had his own recipe, secret recipe. And I've still got mine, yeah. And you used to get soap, which is main ingredients, and other things that you moulded to get, even baking fat as well. And you used to put them on this stick, and that you go the joints in the mould, and the machine's going, and you do that in the mould so they wouldn't stick. At times other places do when you're swabbing the neck rings, because just to explain that to anybody who doesn't know. Excuse me a moment. The first thing that's ever made on a bottle, believe it or not, is the neck ring. That's the neck, that's the bottle, that's the bottom, logically. And that's the neck ring. And the first thing ever made on a bottle when it's been made in a machine is the neck ring. On an orange machine, there was what they called 10 heads. It was 10 units, and they were what they call a double header. Now a double header was every time it went round, one mould made 2 bottles, right? And it went round. There was 10 heads, and it used to go over a large, like a big saucer it was, and that saucer was full of molten glass. And with a cam system on the top, it used to make it dip. It would suck the glass up into what you call the form that there in the ring, neck ring. But you'd have tips go down there like that. And that was, you also use these tips for making it bigger or smaller in there, because QC actually measured what capacity was, and it could be millions.
What was QC?
Quality control. And that's how they did it, and that was the first part made, as I'm saying, in a bottle. The interesting thing about that, we didn't make these at UGB. That is an internal screw. And there was another rival to UGB in this town, another glassworks, and it was called Forster's, right? And it was Foster's who invented the internal screw on a glass bottle. That was another first for St.Helens, you know, and that was used worldwide.